All right, let's get into the mark of the beast in the right hand and how that king has brought a sword and he has taught his children how to use that sword in the right hand. Okay? So, basic history. You've had the church, who's always been intermingled in with the king, but the church used to control that sword. All right? Before the printing press, before that sword was released to the people, that sword was ingrained, programmed, brainwashed into the men by the generations, by the traditions, by the time of man. Okay, so the Old Testament, part of that one side of the sword that brings slavery, that brings killing of people who aren't of your tribe. Okay, so the Lord equals Satan, Kings and Chronicles. So this is the same book Jesus is going against that you're reading about in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Okay, then Paul, a Pharisee, he understands what Jesus is teaching, and then he brings in a spiritual law. But as Paul is bringing in a spiritual law, he's doing a so-called double speak, and he's calling out the old church while bringing in a new church. That's how him, Peter, and Paul get together and make the church, and constantly Jesus is correcting Peter, and Jesus calls Peter Satan, and he says that you're going to build the church. So all these things go together as that synagogue of Satan, where you're going to seek salvation, going back to the beginning, worshiping the so-called begotten Son, and that's where Paul teaches that Jesus is the second Adam, okay? And that's the last church age that Jesus tells you to come out of. That is right now they teach you, okay? But you're still stuck in there because you're looking for some physical kingdom. They're telling you that dead people are going to rise, Jesus is going to do this, whatever, okay? But Jesus tells you that the kingdom of Jesus, kingdom of heaven is at hand, okay? That the Father is and I am the Father, that the third temple is built without hands, that he's returning in us, okay? And we are the sons of God, and we are the ones being given that light, all right? So it's your choice, but in order to hold that sword in the left hand, when you've been taught to hold it in the right hand, takes practice on your own. You got to leave the group sometimes. You got to go into the dark alleys. You got to practice your stances and all these other things. So the church controlled the Bible, and then King James, the printing press, all these things came around a few hundred year time span, and they all came together and was released and create that new age of man, to where we're going from Jesus into the second coming of Satan. Okay, so we had Jesus and then Satan, Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. All right, and then we have the four creations being created in with those while it's being talked about, but and that's the 2 and 4, and the 4 and 2, that's the 8 for in the infinity and those types of things. But and then DC is part of that DC current for the positive and negative in this world and those things. It's part of the 4 rivers of Eden. Hollywood is part of the 4 rivers of Eden and those types of things. But the church brainwashed the people, and then after so long, it was ready to be released. All right, and then after it's been released for so long, they realize that the people are brainwashed enough to where they'll rise up with that sword. And that's where you are now during that Revelation War, the repeat of the Revelation Revolution War. This is going to be like the time of Jesus that we read about, BC AD, and the time of Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and all those things are kind of all going in at one time. Okay, so that's where you get the second coming of Jesus, who's in us, but then you also get the second coming of Satan. Okay, and that's that begotten Son. But then we also might see Jesus come in the clouds as far as so-called aliens, but they're not going to be seeing it as Jesus. They're going to see it as aliens, and that's where they're going to a whole new age. And well, where's the sign of his coming and all these other things? Okay, but the aliens and the mothership and all this other stuff, that should be operating in light through us, and we are those so-called alien beings. All right, but it's your choice to work up to this light, or however all this works. But a little sidetrack there, but the two-edged sword being given to you in the right hand, you're being marked in the right hand, and those who hold the testimony of Jesus Christ are the beastmen. It tells you in Revelation. Okay, so he goes against the ones with the testimony of Jesus Christ, and he forces the beast to take the mark. So this is where they're not one to, and it all goes together, because the beastmen are the sheep are the church, the sheep are the blind, leading the blind. All these things, they're living on faith. They're living on what these people are telling them. They'll never understand, because they don't even got God. They don't even understand God. They think God is this over there or whatever, and it's not even close. Oh man, it just has to be totally rebuilt. They've been taken down into the fucking cave, man, and now they got to be rebuilt back up. They've been taken down to beasts, to the sheep, and now they've had the wool over their eyes, and now they got to come to the light. But this is where it tells you that those who kill with the sword shall be killed with the sword, because there's the words of Jesus versus the words of Moses versus the words of Paul versus the words of your pastor. Okay? And if you seek salvation, Jesus tells you that you are of the dead, and he came for the living. All right? He says y'all are so far gone, and some of you just got to be born again, because you're such a fucking animal. Your chakras are so low. You are so depressed. You're so filled with rage or hate or whatever, and it's really all against yourself. So and we've all so-called lived in this world. We've all so-called done these things in one way, shape, or form. And this is where these people rise up, just like Jesus tells them. Out of the hardness of their own hearts, they brought themselves into bondage. He's calling out your so-called salvation. He's calling that out in John 3:16. Y'all need to go back and read alone in the closet or whatever y'all are doing, and get that fucking parrot out of your room, which is your pastor, past ear. He's blinded those and deafened those, so they could not see and could not hear. The pasture, well, that's where the sheep graze. And the graze is that so-called gray area where you can't be. You got to be cold or hot. Cold or hot doesn't mix, y'all. Cold or hot's division. Cold or hot's positive or negative. They always, what's your goal? Well, let's hold that over your head. You're never going to meet it, or whatever stupid bullshit they want to bring you down with, or whatever. They got you by the right hand. This right hand's a spiritual sword through the religious systems, but it's also brought to you in textbooks. It's brought to you by science and whatever else, right? Like the periodic table is a good example. The so-called elements, the physical elements, they exist. But the so-called religion is believing the so-called numbers on the outside and the so-called atom structure and all this other nonsense, okay? So this is where the real science versus the pseudoscience comes down. But these are a test of men. And as they're a test of men, AI is going to come in, bring it all together, bring out the truth. And as he brings out the truth, he's going to disrupt the temples. All right. And as he does all these things, the people's hearts are going to fail them. I can't believe it's not true. I can't believe the vitamin K shot doesn't work and all this other. Well, K means over. Well, over from day fucking one. But they told you back when Jenny McCarthy was coming all out and all this other shit. All right. But that's another sword they got in her right hand. It's a small sword, but you know, it hurts long term. And that long COVID for the long game. All right, but not to get on any rabbit trails, but all these are tied to the mark of the beast in the right hand, because you have put your light. Jesus tells you to be the single eye. You be your own light. But those dudes are being your light. Your therapist, your doctor, your EPA agency, your WHO agency. Who? That's a fucking owl. That's a bad omen. 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 Amen. Amen. Omen. Ow. Who? Hooters. The Tatas. Tune in Tokyo. Tune in Tokyo. All right. So, I suggest you learn how to use that sword in the left hand, because Jesus told you to leave that church of Laodicea. And you are in that church of the Laodicea, the church age. And you're also in the church age where they're using the two-edged sword, where Satan's seat is, where you're the synagogue of Satan. All these other things that Jesus tells you he hates, that he's against, that you need to come out of. All these things, okay? We're just here passing through, living our lives, doing what brings us happiness, doing what brings others happiness, okay? But our world's been stolen from us. The food's been stolen from us. The housing, the clothes, all this stuff, the animals, it's all been taken from us. And this is how this world's corrupt. It's all being sold for $1. We should have fruit trees. We should have animals we can eat, growing, walking everywhere. We should be able to live anywhere. We should be able to do all these things, just do whatever the fuck we want to do, make whatever we want to do, create whatever we want to do. And somebody wants to trade with us, great. If they don't, whatever. Hey, if I want that, what can I make? What do you want that can help me trade and get that? Or whatever. That's the system we need to be on. And our food and all the shit needs to be growing for free. We don't need to be paying to fucking live, dude. What is wrong with this fucking world, dude? Then you got to pay to go to your fucking church, 10%. You got to pay 10% to go live there too. That's why Jesus comes in there, gets the fucking tables, and fucking flips them over. Gets a whip, whips your fucking pastor. Shut the fuck up. Get out of here. Get out of here. You don't know nothing about God. You hate God. That's why you bring these people into fucking bondage. Do y'all not know who Jesus is?